Direct variation is a relationship where one variable is a constant multiple of the other variable. The constant multiple is called the constant of variation. And we use the letter K for the constant of variation. So direct variation is a proportional relationship. So direct variation is a special type of linear function. Okay, it's linear because the graph looks like a line that crosses through the origin. In direct variation from a table, if you had an XY table, numbers for X, each one of these numbers would be multiplied by the same number to get the Y. That's called the constant multiple or the constant of variation. So for example, if our constant of variation is 3, then 1 times 3 is 3, 2 times 3 is 6, 3 times 3 is 9. So to figure out what K is, you would do Y divided by X. You'd work backwards. And then in words, you want to look for the words directly proportional or varies directly for direct variation. So example 1, determine whether or not the relationship is direct variation from the table. If it is direct variation, determine the constant of variation K and write a function to model it. So to figure out if it's a function's direct variation, you're going to do Y divided by X. So is -2 divided by -6 equal to 1/3 equal to 4/12? So these fractions are all equal. So yes, it's direct variation. I answered the first question, determine whether or not it's direct variation. So yes. And then the second part, if it is direct variation, determine the constant K. So the K is going to be 1/3. Okay, it's Y divided by X. And then your function is going to be Y equals KX. So direct variation is always Y equals K times X, where K is kind of like the slope. We also call it the constant variation. So in this case, your equation is going to be Y equals 1/3 X. There's your equation. So the second one, we're going to try to see if it's direct by doing Y divided by X. So I already can tell that 7/6 is not the same as 4/3. So no, it's not direct variation. So if it's not, I don't need to write an equation for it. And then this one, I can tell it's not because I have a positive times a negative, so that's going to be a negative number. A negative divided by a positive, that's going to be a negative number, but this one's going to be a positive number. So that one's no as well. Okay, example 2. For each function, determine if it's direct variation or not. So what I want to do is I want to solve for Y. So solve for Y and see if you have Y equals a number times X. Okay, there cannot be a y-intercept that's not 0. The y-intercept had to be 0. So for A, this is direct variation because it's actually Y equals 1/2 X. That's the same thing. X over 2, X divided by 2, is the same thing as 1/2 times X. The second one, I'm going to solve for Y, so I'm going to add 1 and then divide both sides by 2. And I can already tell it's not because, so this would be yes. This one would be no because the y-intercept would be 1/2. Okay, over here I can solve for Y by multiplying both sides by 3. So I can tell that over here there would be a y-intercept of 0. So if the y-intercept is 0, yes, it's direct. And then letter D, if I solve for Y, I'm going to subtract 7x and then divide by 4. So Y equals 10/4. So 10/4 would be your y-intercept. So since the y-intercept doesn't equal 0, it's going to be not direct variation. Okay, then 4, 5, and 6. Whenever you read Y varies directly with X, the variable that goes first, that's before the varies I put equal, And then directly with x means you need to put kx. So this first line tells us what we need to have as far as our general equation goes. So then I'm going to substitute when y is negative 10, x is 2. I'm going to solve for k. So when y is negative 10, x is 2. So this means that by dividing both sides by 2, k is negative 5. So my equation is going to be y equals negative 5x. Okay, so the first part gives me a general equation. The second, I need to solve for k. And then the third part, I'm going to find y when x is negative 3. So y equals negative 5 and times negative 3. So y is 15 is my answer. So I'm going to follow that same process again. So y varies directly with x. I know there's no mention of k, but k always goes in the numerator. Then when y equals negative 32, x is 64. So y equals negative 32, x is 64. So if I divide both sides by 64, k equals negative 1/2. So my equation is going to be y equals negative 1/2 x. Find y when x is negative 300. So y equals negative 1/2 times negative 300, which is 150. Okay, example 6. Z varies directly with x. So z equals kx. When z is 12, so plug in 12 for z, x is 9. So I'm solving for k. So divide both sides by 9. So k equals 12 ninths. So 12 ninths is 4/3. So my equation is going to be y equals 4/3 x. So I'm just substituting the k back into my equation. The last thing, find x when z is 15. Oops, this should be a z. Find x when z is 15. So 15 equals 4/3 x. So we have to solve for x. So when multiply both sides by the reciprocal, 3/4. So these two would cancel out. So I'm going to get 45 divided by 4, which is 11.25 for x.